Hi, I'm Tim Eskew.
And I'm Amanda Stradling. We are East Valley Leader Lab, and this is our podcast, Mind and Body at Work.
Wellness, well-being, and mindfulness are trending right now as organizations try to attract and retain the best talent in this tumultuous post-COVID world. At the Leader Lab, we agree these are important concepts and overdue for being fully utilized in the workplace.
We also believe that these concepts only work when you treat the mind and body as a whole. We are excited to be part of a societal shift in attention toward the whole person. We invite you to join us as we begin to look broadly and deeply at wellness, well-being, and mindfulness in the workplace. Hi, I'm Amanda Stradling, and this is Tim Eskew. We are with the East Valley Leader Lab, and this is our podcast, Mind and Body at Work. If you find that our content resonates with you and what you care about, please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and wherever else you get your podcasts. Today's guest is Master Peter Hill. He is my first and primary Tai Chi instructor, and I can't wait to dive into all of his wonderful work. I'm going to go over some of his awesome credentials. So, Peter Hill is a master instructor of Tai Chi, Chinese Kenpo, many various martial arts. He started training in 1977 in Chinese Kenpo. He owned and operated 7 dojos in the Phoenix area from 1981 through 1997, where he then went to Sequoia Charter School, and that's where I met him. He teaches his Get It integrative martial art program there. Currently, so 1997 through the present. He's taught at the Central Arizona College, the National Institute on Aging, the Arizona Governor's Council on Aging, and the National Association of Activity Professionals. He taught his World Tai Chi concepts at the first International Symposium on Tai Chi at Vanderbilt University. As a professional student, he has done EMT training and over 200 hours in bodywork and the healing arts. He currently produces warrior work on YouTube and has written 2 books. So his books are Get It Together and Warrior Work. All right. So let's dive in.
Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for being here, Peter. So we heard some facts about your career. Tell us the story. How did it all start with martial arts? Why did you get into martial arts, and how did that develop?
You know, it's really interesting because in 1977, I went to a karate studio, and they said, "What's your goal in learning martial arts and training?" And I said, "I really want to work on mind-body unification." So it ties right in with what you guys are doing, from back to the very beginning. And it was just, I think the Shaolin, the old Kung Fu show really kind of inspired me toward that, because it's a very mind-body connection, not just about fighting, but it's really about transcending more of that whole process. And so that just started me on that journey. And as Miyamoto Musashi says in his Book of 5 Rings, become acquainted with all arts. Chinese Kenpo is very diverse. It has all kinds of different arts in it as you're learning it. It's really a hodgepodge. And it just kind of branched out into other arts from there. Arnis, Balintuak, and the high levels of Chinese Kenpo, you get into Tai Chi, martial Tai Chi. So it just kind of, the road just kind of keeps weaving and you follow it where it goes. And I would always go where it resonated with me. And I think it's very important on anybody's journey in the martial arts is that you go where it resonates with you, where you feel this is the place. You know?
Yeah, the place of power, somebody says.
Exactly.
Castaneda.
So who were some of the influential teachers early on?
Well, Grandmaster Tomas Connor, who actually was business partners with Ed Parker, the founder of American Kenpo, he was a very, very big influence, very, very martial oriented. From branching out from him, Wally J had a big influence on my Integrative Arts Locks and Controls program. He was really an amazing guy. Ramy Priestis, big influence on my Arnis program. I learned Arnis initially from him. And I really felt that the Arnis was missing something in regards to the Kenpo. And so then, lo and behold, 2 Balintawak instructors came to my dojo and had moved here from New Zealand and the Philippines and started learning Balintawak. And I thought, wow, this is what I was missing. Tai Chi, Willie Lim, big influence. He originally taught us the 24 form at our school, our Mesa school. And branching out from him, I read a series of books called The Chronicles of Tao. At that time, they were actually 3 individual books by the author Ding Ming Dao. And I read about his instructor, Kwan Sai Hung. And again, fortunately, I had the opportunity to do intensive workshops with him and learned a lot of Tai Chi foundational Qigong, the original 5 animals from the Kung Fu temple that the Kempo is based on. And that was just really just... So it's kind of interesting because at that point in time, I had this sort of realization like, gosh, if I were to package all of this, I would have liked to have started with the Qigong essentials and then moved into the Kempo instead of starting with the hard arts first and then coming back into these essentials to kind of rehab my body, by which time was pretty beaten up from all the years of martial arts training.
So I think a lot of people have an understanding, can visualize karate, and Kempo karate is a style and a school of karate. You mentioned Arnis and Balintawak, and these are stick arts, right? Can you just describe those real briefly?
Yeah, those are Filipino stick fighting arts. Their origin is in the Philippines. Kali is also another art that comes from there. But again, I worked pretty much with modern Arnis and Balintawak. And I tell people in the martial arts, really everything's an inward circle, outward circle, or a straight line. And so in Balintawak, you have blocks and strikes, inward blocks and strikes, outward blocks and strikes, inward circles, outward circles. So it doesn't really matter. And a lot of times in a lot of the arts, you start with big circles, gross motor movement. And then as you get better and better, you move down to finer motor movement. Sort of like in tennis. You know, in tennis, you start with the big strokes. And if you get really good, you become like one of the Williams sisters.
Yep. And was all of your training here in the States? Have you ventured outside the States? You mentioned some people of Chinese background.
Yeah, actually, one of the great things about Arizona is that everybody comes to Arizona. Now, I have ventured out of the state. When I trained with Remy Priestess, I did that with workshops up in the Portland area.
Okay.
Many, many years ago. And Dan Anderson, great Super Dan, very, very well known in the karate world, still teaches Arnis and his karate programs up there. So yeah, but a lot of them came to Arizona, and I just had a great network. I got along with everybody, so I would, find out when these things were coming in and go to their intensive workshops. Sometimes with Kwan, we do Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 5 days in a row.
Oh, wow.
So very, very intensive. What I learned to call saturation training, but it was nice because we got to videotape all of it, so we could go back then and break it down step by step by step.
That's important.
It is.
So we've got the beginning of the story, how you got into martial arts, and then you, as you've alluded to, you started sharing it with other people. You've had your schools, and then things evolved from there. So tell us a little bit about how the career evolved and the choices you made to practice what you do.
That's a great question. I've always seen myself sort of as a professional student, adult ADHD, kind of, running here and there, everywhere. And then when I find something that I really like, I can kind of hyper-focus on it. So I was a philosophy major, humanities philosophy major at ASU. So philosophy has always been a core element of the training and the things I teach. And I would always go from the point of view, if I was a student, how would I want to be taught? And in the yin-yang circle, really, you can start with the hard arts, you can start with the soft arts, you can start in the middle. Eventually, if you keep training long enough, they'll eventually all kind of color in, kind of like Bruce Lee would talk about in his Jeet Kune Do philosophies. But in that whole process, I was always trying to break things down to their fundamentals because there's so much confusion in language between the arts coming from China, Japan, the Philippines. The English language is very abstract. So I was trying to condense those down. And so I ran across Sun Tzu's Art of War. And I condensed all of that into basically the get it concept, know yourself, know your opponent, which is the 5 fundamentals from the Art of War. And everything in the whole program fits with that. So you can start with a person coming in and saying, well, what's your goal? what do you want to achieve? And again, I also studied neuro-linguistic programming, took some extensive course training in that. And so it all kind of flows into that big circle of creating what I teach today, which is really a very complete art, but it has lots of different compartments to it.
Yeah, you've been building this curriculum from so many sources for so long.
And continuing to study philosophy and physics and science and, right brain, left brain, neuroscience, neuroplasticity, all of those elements too. So like I said, I'm really a professional student that's constantly integrating, which is why I call it the Get It Integrative Arts.
Yeah. I've got one more about the story. And that is, so at some point you had a large successful martial arts school and you closed that down and you started teaching school. Tell us a little bit about that transition.
That's actually a really interesting transition because at a martial arts dojo, there's a real ability to move into a position of huge egos. Martial arts world has huge egos, and there's a lot of potential for abuse of power because students would always come and say, "What should I do? What should I do?" Mm-hmm. And so part of the Get It concept was, well, what do you want to do? It's your goal. It's your life. It's your journey. What do you want to do? And then you would have lots of students who you'd come and teach the same things to every week, and they wouldn't progress because they would just come back and you were kind of holding their hand. And then you'd have other students who were phenomenal who would just take it and run with it. And I think I just got tired of that whole atmosphere, the hero worship, oh, you're the master. And I wanted to take the program into an inner city school where junior high kids and high school kids, they don't care who you are. They don't care what you know. And I wanted to take it in there and apply the concept of testing it in an atmosphere that's chaotic, where they have very little respect. They're really at a very, they want to survive. That's probably, they have hardships and challenges all the time. In fact, actually, one of my adult students was a senior probation officer from Maricopa County, and he actually wrote about a lot of those students in a book called Badge 411. And it actually is, so it's Juvenile Stories of Probation.
Should we say who this is? Is this Carl Jonoff?
Yeah, Carl Jonoff. He actually wrote the book under a pseudonym because all those records as juveniles are protected.
Okay.
That's okay. Because when you read the book, all the story is set in a fictional city in California. And he and his partner have different names in the book. But every story in there is true. He might have changed a female to a male. Yeah. Might have changed their ages. But every story is true. And it all took place here in Mesa, Arizona. And but there is one person in the book who's real, and that's me. He actually talks about my program in the detention facilities. He talks about the Get It program. And so you get to see the impact that it has in a very tough inner city environment. And, again, it was a new challenge.
And how long have you been doing that?
Since 1997 to present. So
wow.
You just came from work there.
I just came from work. Just came from there. Just came from all of our awesome junior high school students. But it's a K through 12 school.
So I'm a product of Mr. Hill's program, and I want to have a chance to hear him talk about it a little bit more. Can you explain the Get It program, just the way a junior high student might have first been introduced to it?
Well, it's morphed throughout the years. Initially, a student could take either Tai Chi or Kempo, one of the two. And in the Tai Chi program, really, you would find that just by doing the Qigong exercises, again, in Tai Chi, you usually see it done very slow, very methodically. We would not do it that way. We were doing it fast, quick. But you would find that as you do it quick and fast, as a student would progress through it, their mind would start to calm, their body would start to calm, the movements would start to slow down. We'd teach them applications so they would understand what's happening. And they would find that their mind quieted, their body quieted. In fact, I remember one of our superintendents one year, said to the whole school, he said, when I came to the school, I thought there'd be lots of fights. He goes, but I found that when everybody knows how to fight, nobody fights. The same thing, because people got the opportunity to see and deal with reality of what that's about versus all the things in their mind and all the emotional hormones that go on that drive them. And again, part of the Get It program is when you have a clear goal, you direct your energy or emotions through verbal and physical techniques that fit the situation to achieve your goal. When you don't have a clear goal, your emotions tend to direct you to do things, say things that afterwards you say, man, that was really stupid. I should have done this, or should have done this, or shouldn't have said that. So it helps to give you a broader perspective on everything. The program morphed into where they had me teach health a couple of days a week. And from the health program, that developed into over time, a life skills program. So my life skills presentation, basic presentations on my YouTube channel. And that takes them into the GOATs to become the greatest of all times. I'm kind of a nerd for acronyms that I create. Emphasizes the importance of goal setting, organization, accountability, time management, self-motivation, self-control, and stress management, healthy. And those are all we discern between healthy and unhealthy choices in those things. So my kids have it kind of down. I'll say self-control is everybody says life skill. Organization is a life skill. So everything has morphed into, the Get It program sort of has morphed into a Get It together life skills kind of program in all those areas.
That's wonderful. So we've talked a little bit, those skills and concepts are in this book, Get It Together, that we have here with us today. That's a book that I've read many times, but also your book, The Warrior Work, which I've read many times as well.
A 52-week guide to helping you get it together.
Great.
So a little bit broader extension on those things.
Yeah, it's sort of a deeper dive, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. One thing I want to talk about a little bit from the book and a lot of the teaching you do this whole time since you've been gathering your curriculum and then you've been teaching, you've been distilling and kind of getting very clear at the heart of all of the messages. And I think you do that through the symbols that you use in your book a lot. The kanji. Can you talk about that?
Kanji, or Idiograms as they call them in the Chinese. When I would teach the work, I really found a hard time with language. When you use the words power, you say that to a group, you have 50 people, they have 50 different pictures in their head.
Yeah.
Some people it's a positive picture, some is a negative. Knowledge, same thing, very abstract word. Harmony, very abstract word. Love, very abstract word.
One of the most abstract words.
Exactly. So when you purify your intention, you have to kind of get sharper and clearer. And before I actually created the Get It book, I was at a sweat lodge, a 3-day sweat lodge with Wallace Black Elk. I've had the opportunity to train with lots of people, sort of in the spiritual environment community as well. And Wallace Black Elk had a 3-day sweat lodge up in Payson at the RIM Institute, which no longer exists.
Oh, okay.
And we'd do a sweat lodge like on Friday night, and then Saturday morning, and then he'd talk to us, and we'd do another sweat lodge, and he'd talk to us. And one of the talks, he said to us, when the Indian says the white man speaks with a forked tongue, he said he's not being mean. He's not being belittling or malicious. He said he says that because, or we say that because the English language comes from French, Spanish, Latin, German, comes from all these different sources. And so when the white man says a word, it can mean 5 different things. And so a lot of times that's when we say, I know that's what I said, but that's not what I
meant. Yeah.
Exactly. So I thought, wow, that is so clear. And I've been studying the Chinese characters and the ideograms and the kanji. And I thought, gosh, these are pictures of ideas. These are pictures of ideas that create a shared picture. And so if you learn the picture along with the word, then when we use the word, we have the same picture. We're on the same page. One of the things that he emphasized was that, the Indians had pictures. If you look at the Indian characters, they all have pictures for their words as well. And actually, interestingly enough, I teach at Sequoia Charter School. Sequoia was an Indian that actually created a written language, and because he said he realized the reason the white man was so successful was that they had a written language that was actually able to be shared, so they could share their stories. It didn't have to be just an oral tradition. And so that's really how the Idiograms came about. And then warrior, of course, is one of the key characters. It's a character of an axe that's falling, symbolizes death, destruction. There's actually a little symbol above the standing for one. So one person can make a huge difference. And underneath the axe, the person is standing with their arms outstretched to keep it from falling. And so when you start teaching anybody, you say, what? I remember actually I taught at a women's group at one of your retreats, or was a conference or something.
Yeah.
And I asked all the women, I said, why would you stand underneath the axe? Why would you stand underneath the axe? An axe that's falling on you, your family, your community. And nobody could really answer, but ultimately it's love. You cultivate your love, because then you're willing to stand underneath that axe and even let the axe fall on you to stop it from falling on somebody else. And so that goes into a lot of martial philosophy. It goes into the concept of the law, the legal rights that you go through too. So it all integrates together. Law, psychology, philosophy, martial arts training, the ability to punch, kick, grab, throw, choke, lock.
So you've described how you can take something that's viewed as a very physical skill and help junior high kids manage themselves better, right? Manage themselves in
very
life.
Much so.
How do you think about, because you've also worked a lot with adults, how do you think about the relationship between martial arts and people being successful at work and being successful in their life, adults?
Well, everything in the martial arts is about economy of motion, economy of energy. And so when you learn, so you really first have to get the philosophy, the mindset correct. Because if you don't get the mindset correct, everything else you're just waving your arms around. A lot of parents, as they start to learn a lot of the life skills, they say, gosh, I need to take this class. Because again, it just reduces things, gets rid of a lot of that emotional noise that distracts us and distorts, and allows you to get back to the fundamentals. What's the goal? What's the value? And the same thing applies in a workplace. What's the goal? What's the value? Do you want to take the straight road, the direct? Sun Tzu says the direct leads to engagement. And sometimes that's the best thing to do in a business, in a relationship, to clarify it. Sometimes the indirect, he says, leads to triumph. So sometimes it's better to use a softer, more roundabout approach, because when you take the direct approach, generally you're going to end up having people that fight with you and conflict with you. And a lot of that goes in studies of teaching and dealing with students and, conflict, overall.
Oh, absolutely.
So
Yeah, one of the ways that I've heard you summarize it, since I've been studying with you, I started studying with Amanda and now study with both Amanda and Peter. And I love your framework of intent, energy, then technique. And we've actually structured our leadership curriculum around that general process because we're dealing with embodiment, and a lot of that is the energy piece, right? And
yeah, well,
bringing
Carlos
the right energy.
Castaneda, who I also had the great fortune to meet, and a lot of his work influences a lot of what I do, more as teachings versus some of the stories he tells, which have been shown to be sort of, fabricated. But good storytellers do that to capture people's attention. But the three arts of the warrior are intention, perception, behavior. So, and in Sun Tzu's Art of War, the 5 fundamentals, technique is the least important thing. And we hear that when we say where there's a will, there's a way. Your goal and energy is the will. The way is the technique. And anybody who has a strong why will find a way through. And so intention, perception, behavior. And that's really good for understanding yourself or for anybody else too. Because our intention directly affects our perception. If my intention is power, I perceive you as an asset or a threat to my power, and then I behave accordingly. If my intention is pleasure, I perceive you as an asset or a threat to my pleasure, and I behave accordingly. If I'm an avoidance or responsibility person, I'm just looking for somebody to make me happy, which is dangerous. And because now I'm going to make them also responsible for me being unhappy. And then, of course, if your intention is love, then you want to learn, grow, evolve, and you, again, resonate with people that want to do those same things. And so you match up.
Starting with intention, I think, is so important. That's something that, like when I'm teaching self-defense nights or something, I always start there because in one quick seminar, the women aren't going to be able to master the techniques that they're going to want to master to keep them
Correct.
safe. But if they can really dial in on that intent to love themselves, to protect themselves, and preserve their safety, if that's their real intent, the technique will come.
It does.
And also they'll seek out additional training if that's their intent.
Exactly. Different additional tools. It's interesting because one of the things we would talk about in our workshops is, and this is again back in the day, when I'd ask women, if somebody breaks into your house and attacks you and is going to rape you, what are you going to do? And they go, well, I don't really know because I don't want to hurt anybody. We'd hear that goal a lot. Their intention or goal is not to hurt anybody. I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't know if I could hurt anybody. And we say, well, after they hurt you, disable you, and they go after your 14-year-old daughter, what are you going to do? I'd kill him. Instant change. I'd kill him. So because they go from a perception, intention of love for their daughter, they can kill that person for them. They can hurt somebody for them. And I go, well, but now you can't because you're hurt, you're disabled, you're beat up. Why can't you love yourself enough to do that first? And again, that's the concept of the warrior. You have to love yourself enough to be strong enough to keep that action falling on you so you can keep it from falling on somebody else. But if you don't love yourself enough, if you don't value yourself enough, if you don't think you're worth defending, you're looking for somebody else to defend you, it sets for a downward spiral and a lot of bad situations that come from that. Instead of setting, healthy boundaries, right? What we call healthy boundaries.
Yep. That intent of love, I think, is so powerful. And it does ripple out into your career and into all the successful areas of your life. If you really purify that intent, you start making better actions and finding tools and techniques to be successful that maybe you didn't even have in the beginning.
It opens the road. The road. And I think for the people listening, it's important to realize that the character for intent, the ideogram for intent, oftentimes in the Japanese kanji is defined as loyalty, which is really interesting because, again, this is where this whole language thing comes in. So the character is a target with an arrow going through it and a heart underneath. So when your thoughts, words, and actions are focused like an arrow, and your feelings, your thoughts, words, actions, and feelings are focused like an arrow on your target, and your heart is pure, you're at peace, then you have clear intent. If your thoughts are going one way, your feelings are going another way, then you are confused, you're without fusion. And that kind of gets into one of the key concepts to go along with intent, perception, behavior, which I learned really early on in my martial arts career from an Aikidoist. And that was the concept of Shin, Ki, Ryoku. Shin is a character that can mean heart or mind. So Shin-Yi oftentimes is translated as heart-mind boxing. Okay, Shin. So your heart, whatever's in your heart, your brain figures a way to get it. And it's going to try to justify it. So the two, you really want those two aligned, your mind and your heart. Ki, your energy, then directly is created from that. So if you're depressed and you're sitting around and you're sad, and then your best friend calls you, all of a sudden, your shin changes, your energy changes, and your body straightens up. Your ryuku changes. And ryuku is a character meaning strong or powerful. It's the character for when you see it's actually the character for gung or kung also.
Okay.
So gung, it's a person holding something heavy in their arm. Strong, strength. So standing postures tie into cultivating that kind of strength. And so, and that really ties into NLP too. So if somebody's sad and depressed, you say, okay, hey, let's go for a walk. I want you to stand up, take a deep breath, go and walk with me and tell me about it. And when they start walking and breathing deeply, it's hard for them to be a victim. They have to go back into the physiology of the victim. So martial arts training, whether it be doing yoga, Tai Chi, Kempo, Taekwondo, Shotokan, the physiology changes your energy, which changes your state of mind. And so you can't be a victim. You can't be woe is me, poor me.
Exactly. And that's the importance of the role of the body And again, that's where we start, right? You've got
Exactly.
to have some awareness of what's going on in your body, what your body is telling you, so that you can manage that chi, so that you can put all your energy toward that intent. Right?
Exactly.
And then you'll figure out a way to get there. But in
it's
our
like any
culture,
energy.
we tend to start in the head,
Right.
So
We
what's
kinda live
the
in our head.
idea? What's the process I'm going to use? And if you don't have the right energy, the first barrier you come up against, right, you're gonna
Exactly.
get stuck.
I like to use the word somatic a lot.
Yeah.
And somatic training is so important because it kind of incorporates that whole, it kind of integrates everything together, kind of stirs all those ingredients together into that process. And that's just something that takes some time for people to get out of their left brain, language separation. And just to kind of share a really quick story on, most religions have the story of the fall, the separation, original sin, whatever they want to call it. And in the Bible, God's walking with Adam, and then one day Adam's hiding, and God says, "Where were you?" And he goes, "Well, I was hiding." He goes, "Why'd you hide?" He goes, "Well, because I was naked." And God said, "Who told you were naked?" From a philosophical, psychological point of view, that was really the cultivation of our left brain.
Yeah.
The ego, the I am. Wayne Dyer, who I got a chance to spend a lot of great time with when he was here with Celebrate Your Life. My wife was a personal assistant for him. He said that ego is an acronym for edging God out. So the ego, the self, the I, creates that separation. And so the original sin really was, and sin is a Greek archery term meaning to miss the mark. Again, going back to the character intent, missing the mark, missing the intention. You separate that connection, edging God out, I am. And so to get back to that, you have to get back to that right brain, left brain integration, whole brain concept, which happens when we move into nature, nature retreats, sweat lodges, martial arts where we get to turn the left brain off and we're just in the moment, we're in the process, but we're moving from a clear intention.
That's perfect. Yeah, thank you. So that brings us into kind of your views of well-being, and
Right.
You're already talking about a lot of that, but how do you define well-being?
I can probably do that best through really health and wellness. Health is each individual category. How is your mental health? How is your physical health? How is your emotional health? How's your social health? How's your environmental health? How's your financial health? So you go through each of those characteristics individually. How's your spiritual health? Spiritual, if you don't like the word spiritual, you can say, how's your energetic health, your connection, your feeling of connection? So for the atheists and the agnostics and all the people that don't believe in a God, that don't believe in creation stories, how's your connection to nature? Because you can still get that connection. That's an energetic process that goes beyond all the ways we describe the world based on how our assemblage point, came into being. So health is each of those individual components. Wellness is the integration of all of those together. And so a lot of times you find, when people become going to college, they start really studying hard. What do? They gain the freshman
15 at least, right?
Yeah. So they gain the freshman 15, the freshman 20, right? Because all of a sudden now they're not moving as much, running here and there, walking, exercising. And then they get out and they get into the workforce, and now they're getting a sedentary job. And they're snacking and they're eating. And so their financial health is going up. Their mental health is strong. Their social circles are growing, but their physical health starts to go.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, they get to a point where all of a sudden their physical health starts what? Pulling them away from those other areas. So we have to keep well-being as the big picture. And in my life skills program, you've got the soil, then you have the tree. And in the tree, you have the goats, all these different areas. And on the bottom, the first branch is goals. Within those, you have your physical, mental, emotional, social, spiritual, environmental, and financial that you have to kind of keep in balance. But all those make up your tree. The soil, you have to keep your soil healthy. That's your diet and character skills and clarity of intention and your mindfulness. Mindfulness matters, and how your whole mindset creates and helps all of those other things to flourish. And as a left brain compartmentalist society, we tend to hyper-focus in one area of the tree, and the others kind of fall out.
Yep.
So a lot of doctors.
The money part, right?
Exactly. Yeah, the doctors, in a great book that has influenced me called Into the Magic Shop by Dr. James Doty, a neurosurgeon's quest to unlock the secrets of the heart and the brain, or the heart and the mind. He talks about how doctors and surgeons have a much higher rate of divorce than the average person, the average population, because why? They're workaholics. Everybody sees them as godlike, and they tend to get so caught up in that world, their social world just collapses and implodes on itself. If presence is one of your, in the soil of the tree is the 5 love languages. If presence is one of your important love languages, it's one of the things that really make you feel loved, and the person who you're married to is never there, doesn't matter how much money they give you, because if gifts is not that important, but presence is, then the tree's going to collapse. That relationship's going to implode. So again, another aspect of the life skills poster tree.
I really resonate with the way you're defining well-being. I have another mentor named Bob Dunham, and with him, everything starts with care. Just like you start with intent.
Yeah.
And the first question is, what do you really care about? And this is something we use in our program as well. And when you first start asking people to examine that question deep in their self and their body, they tend to say, well, I care about a lot of things. Right. And so Bob talks about, we have domains of our life, and different domains of our life are more important at different stages of our life. So think about where you are and think about the different domains and what is it what really matters to you now at this stage of life.
I bet you could come up with an acronym for care, turn that into an acronym.
I'm sure
I like the word value. I use the word value more than care, but even values, when you're working with junior high students and high school students, a lot of times when you say, what do you value? A lot of them don't even really understand what that word means. And then when they start, what's important to you? Well, for most of them, it's their shoes, it's their phone, it's very material things. And then as you kind of take their awareness and raise their awareness through things like the Freedom Riders, that's a great movie that we usually show to help them to kind of see the struggle, and they really resonate with that struggle. All of a sudden, they start to realize that family, community is something to value. So helping them to get different perspectives can sometimes raise their awareness on what they actually really care about. Because a lot of times we don't think about what we really care about if we're taking it for granted. Mm-hmm. And we only realize we care about it when it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
So we have to kind of bridge that gap. So that's a good task for you to come with an acronym.
Okay.
CARE for acronym for capturing and helping raise that awareness.
4-letter words, perfect for an
Exactly.
acronym.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I think for me when getting to the root of my values and my care was having to step beyond what I thought I was supposed to care about. Maybe the values that I was initially given, and really connect with myself. And I think that took some of the physical practices that you taught me to learn to listen to my body, maybe shut off some of the left brain programming and dialogue that was always running that I've been given.
This is what you should do. This is what a woman's role is, task is. Yeah, and as you build your energy, a lot of those things just don't work. And you start to say that, but that's really, it's a manifestation of energy. So I had a student once who was a fellow teacher, and she was just doing the Tai Chi and other martial arts, and as her energy was building, she told me, she said, I got to take a break for a while because I'm seeing that if I keep building my energy, I'm going to get divorced. Mm-hmm. And the current worlds that I'm living in are going to fall off of me. And she goes, I'm not ready for that. And so she quit training. And about a year later, she started training again, and she built her energy up again, and she got divorced and moved into different worlds. But you have to be ready for those things. It's like people that want to lose weight. I had a woman once told me, she goes, I really want to lose 20, 30 pounds. And I said, what are you going to do with all the extra energy you have when you lose 20, 30 pounds? I said, what are you going to do with the energy? And I said, how's your husband going to feel about you losing 20, 30 pounds? When you look better, when you're more fit and you have more energy, how's that going to affect your relationship? And she said, I think that's what's been keeping me from losing the 20 to 30 pounds. Because we all have, one of my great things I learned from Carlos Castaneda was we all start off in life with an assemblage point. So whether we're born to Indian parents with a Hindu religion, we're born to Chinese parents with a Buddhist religion in Hong Kong, we're born in Israel with the Jewish parents, with the Torah, whether born in Arizona to Catholic or Protestant or Mormon parents with the Book of Mormon or the New Testament, wherever we're born, from the time we're very young, or we're born in Sonora, Mexico, and we're Spanish speaking, wherever we're born, our parents and the people around us start describing the world to us. And so we pick up that language, and that's why at a young age it's great to be able to pick up 2 or 3 languages. But we pick up the language, and when we get to be about 3, 4, or 5 years old, we start to describe the world back to them in that language the way they've described it to us. And if we do a really good job of describing it, then we become a member. If we don't describe it the same way because our energy configuration is different, and we don't really see what they're telling us as being true for us, then we become a black sheep of the family. We get ostracized and put out, And then we sort of have to find our own way till we find where a place, a group, a philosophy, a religion, or something speaks to us and resonates to us, and then we convert to that. But the more we understand the assemblage point, the more we can honor anybody's energy field, anybody's energy configurations, and we can help them to find their own way. Sort of like Einstein's, or is it the old cartoon of 5 different animals taking a test?
Oh.
And they all have to, and the test is to climb a tree. And of course, some of them aren't built to climb a tree. So learn to find what our own gifts. Margaret Mead said to find our gifts and to share them with the world. That's really what our task is. And education sort of, I think charter schools do a really good job of helping people to do that better, to find their gifts. They're a little bit more open and expansive with that, which what allows my program in there. Whereas a lot of other schools, this is the way. It's either, and again, dojo, the word dojo literally means place of the way. For a lot of dojos, it's either their way or the highway. Mm-hmm. We're really, from my philosophy, a dojo is a place for you to find your way. Your gifts, what resonates with you. And that can take some time. Patience, love, gratitude, courage, humor, passion, all those things.
Clarify for me the assemblage point, because that's always interesting to me when you talk about it. But so there's that conversation that people have in that formative stage of life. Is that their assemblage point developing?
The assemblage point is really where you're born. So if you take the globe and you put a spot on it where you were born,
okay,
that's where your assemblage point is starting. So if you're born in a war-torn country where bombs are going off, then that's the point that you're starting to see and experience the world from, and you're starting to build your world. It's kind of like Legoland. You're starting to get your little building blocks, and you're starting to build this construct of the world the way it is, and from you, it's true. And so when people argue about this is the way the world is, this is the way the world is, for them it's true, because that's where they've assembled it from, and that's the construct they built it from. For me, it's the very first thing in warrior work, which it talks about. I take you through Musashi's 9 precepts for the warrior. And one of those is seek the truth, do not be dishonest in your thinking. We tend to all be like the 9 blind men in the elephant, that we see where the world's built from our point of view, and we fight it and defend it, but we're all blind because we have to open our eyes and see that every one of those other 8 blind men all see the truth as well. And so the truth is a lot bigger and broader than just from our little Legoland. But we have a goal of power. What do? We're going to protect our Legoland because, gosh, a massive heart attack can make it crumble. A divorce can make it crumble. Getting fired can make it crumble. So there's all the things that can shake up our little Legoland world. And there's certain pillars, though: religion, philosophy, family, good, strong social connections that can kind of hold together the base structure, the root system, so that tree can grow back out and flourish again. Or we can rebuild a new Legoland in our lives.
So it is kind of that root system that develops, right? It's kind of where our context comes from. Our
Exactly.
context of viewing the world, seeing the world.
Exactly. The first thing a baby really recognizes is its mother's face and its mother's voice.
Yeah.
Everything else is blurred. So if you look at child psychology, again, why psychology is so important, first thing they do, and then slowly other things start coming into fruition. And again, when we look for something, when we know it's there, it's like black holes. We couldn't see them. They knew they were there. They couldn't see them. And all of a sudden, when they found one, what they do, they start finding them everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
A lot of things are in life like that.
Right.
You know?
That's really interesting.
It's like looking around. It's like trying to memorize everything blue in a room, and then closing your eyes and have somebody say, "Okay, tell me everything that's green." You're like, "Oh no." Our attention is like a focused little flashlight of intention. Your brain takes in 11 million bits of information in a second, but your little flashlight of attention can only pay attention to 40 to 60 of those. So if you look at attention blindness tests or inattention blindness tests, we see what we're focused on. We don't see anything else around.
Yeah.
You know? And so we have to be very clear on what our intention and attention is towards, because it's oftentimes blinding us to a lot of other things. But a lot of times we're doing that because we only have so much energy to hold together our world, our little Legoland set. But as you build your energy, you're not afraid of it falling apart. Mm-hmm. Because you realize you're more than that construct that's created. You can move in between and through worlds instead of falling apart. Men tend to fall apart with worlds when they fall apart, you know, which I think why suicide rate is much higher with men.
Interesting.
Women, you know, their worlds fall apart. They cry. They have a breakdown. Then they go out and build a new world. You know, so it's a different, interesting energetic configuration, I think, in that process.
That is interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. Warriors develop the endless capacity to adapt, right?
And improvise, yes.
Yep, which is something I think that you've really embodied with your whole life's story and the way that you've taught. Your teaching, your curriculum has adapted and evolved, and your personal way is always flowing and changing. Yeah. I think that keeps us vital.
It does.
Always staying.
Life is
in
never
the
boring.
Flow. Yeah.
A lot of people get bored when people say, "Gosh, it's so boring." I go, well, that's because you're used to being stimulated and entertained. And you're bored because you want something to stimulate you and entertain you. You know, practice some neuroplasticity, learn something, challenge yourself, because dementia is real. And one of the ways you keep it off is by developing right brain, left brain integration, constantly developing new highways, new neural networks, you know, learning a musical instrument, learning a foreign language, you know, taking it out there and apply it, go to groups where you don't understand anything, where everything's completely new. You know, you were a baby once and you went and you couldn't understand the language. You want to learn French. I had a friend that learned French, started going to French groups and talking and learned French, you know, fluently. But become like a baby, become like a kid. At one time you couldn't walk. You fell down all the time. You keep getting up. You couldn't ride a bike. Do something. And we get bored because we just want to be stimulated and entertained. And we forget to challenge ourselves to cultivate and find different gifts in us. And a lot of times people don't find those gifts until they're much older and they go, wow, I never tried this before. Get out and try new things.
Yeah.
You know,
Become a beginner again.
Yeah. Be like a little kid.
Yeah.
Be able to laugh at yourself. Have fun. Don't take yourself so seriously.
Yes.
The curse of self-importance, you know, the danger of self-importance.
I think that holds a lot of people back from trying and taking action and doing things.
What will people think? What will people say? You build your energy, you don't care. You laugh, you have a good time.
And that brings us back to well-being. So one more question I have for you is, you know, what we're doing in this podcast in season 1 is we're collecting and examining as many different perspectives on well-being as we can get. You've given us a great one today. Ultimately, part of what we want to do, we think some of our listeners and our clients are interested in, you know, how to create more positive well-being at work. So you're a working person. What's one thing you think organizations could do better? We know you're doing a lot of things in your class.
Yeah.
All right. Say more about
So that's the big word. That's the big buzzword, culture. Culture has to start with the top. Because if you don't get support from the top, I've been through a lot of cultures. I've been through, 7, 8 administrations, principals, different administrations, superintendents. And the way to change the culture is you change your language. Change your language, change your culture. And so you have to have a clear intent. You have to have a vision. You have to have a mission, a purpose, a mindset, and you have to get everybody to buy in. And so one of the things I do, and I haven't, there have been years when I haven't gotten any buy-in at all, but I use it on my students, and I change their language, and I change the culture through changing them. So light that candle, be that light, change your language, be very mindful of what your words say. The character for knowledge or know is an arrow pointed upward and a mouth. How does the Asian language get the word knowledge, know, to be an arrow and a mouth? When we speak, our words are like arrows. When we say mean things, we're putting people down. We're shooting them down. When we are trying to sell them on something, we're shooting them where we want them to go, toward our goals. If we are moving from a loving intention and our goal is to educate, encourage, empower, and evolve, then we're going to use our words to propel them higher. We're going to be asking what is best. We're not going to say this is the way it's done because it's always been done that way. Because that's control and power. It gives the ability to innovate. Innovation occurs when you can use your words to shoot other people up and to shoot yourself up. And so you do that with education, bringing out of them what's inside of them, encouraging them, finding what's in their heart, courage, cour, from the French word cour, encourage them to move from their heart, empowering them to take action. It's okay to make mistakes. You use growth mindset, use core growth mindset values, and you evolve. You keep moving up. So it's that simple. So you can do it as an individual. It's like that character for warrior. One person can make a difference. It's where the story of Mulan comes from, is that character.
Yeah, she wasn't the general.
No.
Sometimes
she was a daughter.
Someone who shouldn't have even been a soldier,
Correct.
right, can step up.
But her
and
love
be
and
the
her
warrior.
heart compelled her to go, didn't it?
It all comes back to that intent.
Exactly. And even though it's against the rules and broke all the rules and broke all the genres, it ended up working out okay in the end because she moved from her heart. Could have ended badly, but it didn't.
For each of us, it comes down to the heart and the intent.
Exactly.
And in organizations, I'm hearing you say that well-being starts with the behavior of the leader. They need to be mindful of the impact they're having with the arrows that they're speaking.
Yeah, if you have a toxic leader and a toxic culture, and you walk into that, probably you're going to get fired pretty early on, because you're a threat to their power. You're a threat to the way they do things.
Oh, as the subordinate.
As somebody who's a subordinate,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So and you're going to annoy everybody by your positivity,
Yeah.
But it's okay because you can get your work done and nobody will bother you.
Yeah.
But so again, you can make a difference wherever you go by lighting that one little candle, in the darkness. In a dark room, you light a candle. People have the opportunity to scurry away from it into the darkness, or they come to it. And so like energy attracts like energy.
Yeah. The leader doesn't have to be the person that's in charge.
That's correct. But the mission of the company, their cultural values, very, very important. What kind of a culture they want to create, very, very important in terms of the mindfulness of the whole process.
Yeah, like a mindfulness on a true physical level, really being keyed into that intent, and then clarifying it through very sharp, clear language.
Exactly.
Right, with good mission statements, and then using
HR. Some companies have workout facilities. My daughter works for the city of Mesa in the fire department. She's an assistant to the brigade chiefs, I believe. And, they're looking at putting a steam room in, or sauna or steam room in some of their stations.
Oh, cool.
So, because that's a great way to de-stress. Firefighters have a life expectancy much shorter than the average person.
Do they?
Because that adrenaline, you're sleeping there, you're relaxing, all that adrenaline spikes go off. Having to go through that, those adrenaline spikes, that wears on your body over time.
Sure.
And so to be strong and fit, have exercise facilities in your area where you're at, and saunas or steam rooms to calm down, de-stress.
Really decompress.
Very important for hoping to get that life expectancy rate up to a higher level.
Yeah, so
That sounds
take
like
care of your
the
people.
beginning of another conversation. And we're going to have to draw this one to a close. We've used up our time. Any last question for you?
No, I just want to direct our listeners to where they can learn more from Peter Hill. You want to tell them some of your locations?
Well, I move around because I don't have my own studio anymore. I move around to different studios, but Warrior Work, Peter Hill, Warrior Space Work Space Peter Space Hill on YouTube channel has got over 120 videos on it now, and I'm constantly adding to it.
Yeah, and these are
different
high
times.
quality video with a lot of content, very rich.
Yeah, very, very diverse, from Tai Chi, Qigong essentials to martial forms to, weapons forms, wushu weapons forms. So a whole gamut. So you have to really play around. It's not really organized in any kind of step-by-step pattern. But Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any ebook place carries my Warrior Work, a 52-week guide to getting it together by Peter Hill. Great book, great resource. Goes much more in depth into a lot of different of my musings, on the warrior path. Other than that, they can contact me through email, jempeh@cox.net. Jempeh, Jempeh @cox.net. Jempeh is a fusion of my wife and my name. Her name being first because the yin should lead the yang, and keep us
another lesson.
Keep me kind of toned down. I can be very, very hard, and so my whole life I've been working on being. So yoga is very important to me at this stage of my life, and more yin Tai Chi, more yin yoga.
Good.
To keep that hard side at bay.
Good.
Peter, thank you so much for sharing a lot of life lessons, a lot of lessons about well-being, and we both enjoy having you as a master teacher, and we really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. I appreciate
thank
having
you
both
so
of you
much.
in my life on this journey.
Yeah.
So I want to thank our listeners for being here. This has been Mind and Body at Work by East Valley Leader Lab. If you get a chance, check out our leadership curriculum at www.evleaderlab.com. And like we said at the top, if you like what you're hearing here, please like, share, or subscribe to our YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. And as our mentor Peter likes to say, make it a great day.
Yeah.
Make it a great day. And as we like to say, be well and keep moving.